The other day, I was moving clothes from the washer to the dryer. And after I had put everything in the dryer, turned it on, I was leaving the room. And as soon as I hit the light switch to turn it off, boom, the dryer shuts off. What is your immediate reaction? Mine was, oh, there must be a power surge, or I must have flipped a breaker somehow, even though that doesn't quite make sense. That was my initial thought. And what's interesting is that I went to look at the dryer a little closer, and I saw that the door had popped open and the sheets were bulky enough that it just so happened that the timing was so precise. Literally, when I clicked the switch, the dryer door popped open. And for me, it was a wonderful reminder that correlation is not causation. And I sort of laughed at myself because, as a former scientist, I have been trained, super trained, not to see correlation as causation, to see events that happen in seemingly sequential order, or it's not really the right way to say it, but happening around the same time, or seem to move together, or are together in some perceived correlation, doesn't actually mean anything. It's just a potential relationship that warrants further investigation. And that's where the power of statistics and mathematics comes in handy. So I laughed at myself because I thought, with all of that training, I still have an inclination that the first thing that my mind does, this is metacognition, and I love understanding how people's minds work. My own, my clients, yours. It's really fascinating. Random commenters and the projections they put on me and they put on other people. I love it. I love what I do. And somewhere in our cognition, we as a species have to be trained formally that correlation is not causation necessarily. It could be sometimes, but you have to look into it. Just like with the dryer example and the precision of that door popping open just as I hit the light switch. It was a powerful reminder that not all coincidences are meaningful as well. And in the spiritual awakening community, you'll hear people say there's no such thing as a coincidence. And usually what they're referring to are serendipities. But also in the spiritual awakening community, what you'll find is that people can be downright superstitious and see a lot of serendipities and sometimes over attribute meaning to those. Not all the time. But I have seen it in people who have erosion in their cognitive functions due to some particular very situation specific things to them, like health issues. And so what you'll see is a deterioration in their ability to filter accurately logical and rational points in the world and associations. You also see this with people who are under a lot of stress or under duress, and there's almost this weakening of the logic mind. And then what happens is that everything gets thrown into the significance bucket, particularly when people are in hypervigilant states and or experiencing a great deal of stress or anxiety. And there are other factors that can contribute to this as well, but I'll just leave that there for now. So last episode, I actually picked on those who were hyper rational and hyper logical and said that they were at a disadvantage for being able to feel their manifestations or their realities start to shift before they actually materialize. And this episode, I'm going to be picking on those that are highly intuitive and say that those that have a dominant thinking style that is predominantly oriented towards making connections, filling in the blanks, using intuition, using your spider sense. Your challenge is that not everything is going to be related in the way that you think that it is. And this creates a barrier to reality shifting because it plays into sometimes false beliefs and denial of reality, which can actually delay your process, because the quicker that you accept things for what they are, like let's say failure, for example. Failure has a bad rap, but when you have an entrepreneurial mindset, it's actually an invitation to change. And you can do it before things get really rough, but it requires accurately assessing a situation, taking in bits of information, weighing them logically and rationally, playing out potential outcomes, and then creating a change in your behavior and redirecting your lifeline or your ship or your business or your project or your relationship before it hits the wall. And failure is only really, really uncomfortable if you get really close to the wall or if you hit the wall and it blindsides you. But when you recognize that you need to do something different before you have major health problems, before there's a bankruptcy crisis, before you lose the person that is like the love of your life, before the inevitable job layoff happens, what you can do is that you can harness that intuitive feeling that something's wrong and something needs to change and recognize that it's an invitation. And then when you do that, the prospect of failure is actually an exciting one, because now you start to understand that when you start to feel that feeling that you're going to hit the wall if you continue on the same trajectory, then you can sidestep it entirely. But if you are denying reality and blithely going along, I can manifest, and I can do everything, and I can, yes, sometimes, but then sometimes not, because sometimes it's not in your highest interest. What you want may not actually be in your highest interest at that time. And so to hold on to your wish and your balloon string, I'm imagining this balloon for some reason that you're holding on to, when the wind is really starting to blow and try to push you in a different direction, what's going to happen is that eventually you're going to have to let go of the balloon string. And it's going to be a moment that may not be very pleasant. And so being able to accurately assess when you are being unreasonable, when you are being delusional, when you are miscalculating is really, really important, because what happens is that when you over-identify every little thing as a serendipity, and I've seen the whole gamut where people will have like a series of numbers, but the numbers that they have, it's like every number is a serendipity. And it's the way that their brain is decoding information. And usually I've only seen that with people who have been using in excess things that modify their brain chemistry. I'm dancing. I'm trying to be very careful here for the filters and whatnot. So there's something about the function of our brain that when you start to modify your brain chemistry to a excessive amount, very, very excessive amount, whatever region the serendipity decoding part of your mind is operating from suddenly becomes unleashed. And then everything is a serendipity, even the most impossible, improbable things. And it's like every 5 minutes, the person is saying, oh, there's a serendipity, there's a serendipity. And it could be, but it also could be that their brain is over attributing coincidences, and that what they are experiencing is happenstance. And I say this because I have directly observed this in some people that I have interviewed for client work that were not in the right place or the frame of mind to actually embark on that client work. Similarly, when I've worked or interviewed people that are deep in nightmare realms, you'll see the same effect, but it's different, where everything is related to their nightmare. And I have personally been through that because I've been through a nightmare experience. So I have observed how my brain has overgeneralized. And literally, it's a freaky phenomenon to see. And so I'm able to observe it in other people when that function has gone haywire. But unfortunately, sometimes trying to talk to people when they're in that frame of mind and tell them that their brain is overgeneralizing, it doesn't go over so well. So everything is on a spectrum. And most normal people don't fall into that extreme. But I share some of those examples to illustrate how the brain can take sometimes neutral information and try to write it into the magical or write it into the nightmare or the serendipity bucket. And you just have to be mindful about your proportion, because just like me with the situation with my dryer hitting the light switch at the same time that the dryer door popped open. I mean, sure, we could even say that that was not a coincidence because I could make this episode. But for me, in the moment, it actually felt like a really bizarre coincidence that I was able to pull into an episode. But that doesn't mean that the universe somehow caused it, or that there was some operating entity or force that orchestrated that in order for me to have this episode. And also because I had been thinking about doing this episode regardless of that encounter. And so this is why sometimes I pause when I hear people say blanket statements like, and I've even said it too, so there's no judgment, like there are no coincidences. And I say that when I'm meeting somebody and it's like a serendipitous encounter and it feels right, and we exchange numbers or contact information. I just had this happen recently at a store, and standing in line, I met this wonderful woman who was writing a book, and she beat cancer. She had like stage 4 cancer, and her energy and her presence is just so beautiful. And we got into a little bit of a conversation, and as I was walking away, she was like, "Hey, let me give you my card." I was like, "Yeah, that feels right." And one of us said, or maybe we didn't, I can't remember, but it was one of those moments we would have said there are no coincidences or there's a reason for everything, because that's what it felt like. And so I don't want to take away the merit of those statements, because I still have those moments in my everyday life. But what I want to do is draw our attention to the idea that when we don't have that feeling, when we don't have that connection to the serendipity, or when our brain is automatically trying to write things to make it fit that things are serendipities when they're not, what happens is that it actually does us a disservice, because not only does it weigh on our emotional, faith-bound experience, but it deludes us from actually experiencing what is waiting for us, because we are moving in the wrong direction and resisting where the universe, our higher self, our guides, where our lifelines are tethered into. And so, for example, if you are trying to shift out of a world that you are, let's say, setting sail, trying to find, a lot of people are looking for the love of their life. So let's just use that example. You're trying to find your twin flame, or you're trying to win back your twin flame, because most people don't go searching for the twin flame experience. It finds them, and then they go trying to get back with their twin flame. And so if you are resisting separation, if you are resisting the process of that part of the journey, then what can happen is that when you see 1111, for example, your brain might interpret, oh, they're coming back. Oh, I should text them. Because culturally speaking, a lot of people have been trained that when they see 1111, it means that they're on the twin flame journey. And I'm not on a twin flame journey right now. I have been before, but I'm not right now. And I see 1111, and my brain decodes it that I'm on the right track. And I'm not focused on love or romance right now, or any partnership. I'm actually just focused on myself and building my businesses. And so as a result, what I see is that I'm moving in the right direction, and it's a breadcrumb. But when people want something like their twin flame, then when they take that serendipity, they might miscategorize it, and then they might start to behave in a way that moves them in the wrong direction. And they're sitting by their phone waiting for them to text, or they start re-engaging with them because they're blinded by what they want and not necessarily embracing the experience and the journey of separation. And the quicker you move through separation, the quicker you come out the other side. And a lot of people spend years of their life, decades even, waiting and wishing and holding on for unavailable partners because of this experience, because of the love that they feel and the resistance to letting that go when it's time to. And it's not always time to. But your soul has a map inside. And what's amazing is that if you would let go, you would actually find what you want on the other side after you go through a couple of legs of the journey and healing and doing the internal work. And it's a beautiful dance that really, it's magical. But when you have a serendipity and you miscategorize it, or you take a neutral experience and you try to put it into the serendipity bucket, what can happen is that it can spin you around in circles. And you can get very, very confused. You can get very heartbroken. You can feel like nothing's working. You can get mad at the universe. I've done that. You can lose your faith. And that's a sad reality. and you can miss out on what is waiting for you, what is ready to manifest. So listen, I am a reality shifting coach, and if you are interested in understanding how you process the world, how you build reality, how you deconstruct reality, how you blow up realities, that is a specialty of mine, how reality may not be working out best for you, or how you want to optimize it, then I'm your person. Feel free to reach out to me at sacredjourneyproductions@gmail.com.